You didn't follow a traditional teaching path. You started as a substitute and unexpectedly found yourself as a full time teacher. What did that experience teach you about education and the formal program did not have?
So obviously, I haven't done a formal program, so I can't tell you exactly what it has. But from my experience, what I saw, I was a business management major, College of Geese Business, University of Illinois, and I did some business kind of management, some project management for construction companies, some sales, some marketing, some video marketing, and then I found subbing. I did substitute teaching on and off for a couple weeks, and then it was a interesting situation. One of their teachers was gone for a month, so I filled in, and then slowly filled out the rest of the semester for him because he ended up leaving. And then they offered me full time, so last semester. So definitely not the traditional path. I think one thing that it taught me, um, I guess there was less, and of course structure and foundation is good, but I think there was less of an expectation of what it's going to be like, or this is how it has to be. And it was a better situation for me to be able to just kind of put my spin on it and just say, hey, I kind of got through in the fire, and I was just like, hey, I'm going to try my best. It helped me, I think, connect with the students more. It was less, like I said, kind of not structured but formal. It was a bit more of okay, like I'm experiencing this for the first time. Haven't even really thought about it since I got out of high school myself, and so yeah, I think that was kind of the difference that I felt.
I can imagine that the first thing some students might think when they realize you're the permanent teacher for the rest of the semester is this guy's like almost my age. So at 24, you're actually closer in age to your students than most teachers. Does that proximity kind of help you connect with your students, or does it create challenges when it comes to establishing your authority in the classroom?
Definitely a bit of both. I've definitely seen how it helps me connect. I think students are just more likely to, again, they see me as closer to their age. You know, other teachers less so sometimes, and so they're more open to connect and kind of share their own kind of personal feelings or just kind of be themselves more. They're less worried about that, so that's definitely been great. I think it's helped me form a lot of really good connections with students. um, I felt like I formed a lot of those last semester, um, but of course that definitely makes it harder. There's a bit less of a respect on that level as the authority figure. I definitely found that when I was just subbing before I had my own classes last semester. I was subbing the last month and a half as their full time sub. Some of these students were, I had the relationship I had created was one of a substitute teacher, and then it was, oh, now I'm your full time teacher, and you have to do all these things, and I have to tell you to do these things, and you actually have to. I mean, not that when you're a sub they don't have to listen, but there's a bit more openness to it. So that authority was something that I hope to work on next year because I definitely saw it where a couple kids were like, "Oh, I can push the boundaries. He's cool." I'm like, not that cool."
Could you like tell us about a time where you've had to kind of put your foot down, where someone was pushing the boundaries or maybe trying to get away with a little bit more than they should? I remember being um, a terrible eighth grade student, frankly, and anytime I had a sub, I would be doing all I could to just get away with as much, not do any work. What is something you've had to do to kind of, hey, like we need to get this done and finish this work?
Yeah, for sure. So it was with a freshman student, one of the classes I was subbing first that first semester I finished out, and again he'd gotten a little too buddy buddy almost, and I did not have a good handle on it. It wasn't that bad, but it was like my second or third time kind of subbing for them, and so didn't know him very well. Um, he was kind of talking and being disruptive, and I kind of got on it, and then he said a bad word, a pretty bad word. Worse than you're probably imagining. And I was just like, go, like, now you're gone. Like, I was just like, I just talked to him in the hallway, and I was like, I'll tell you right now, that is so unacceptable. It is not going to happen here, whether I'm a teacher or the sub, it doesn't matter. It's not going to happen. And so yeah. And so I think that was the first thing. And I think it helped a little bit with him, where it was like, okay, he's not just going to let everything slide. But again, I talked to him and I sent him in the hallway, but I did not send him to the office, which is something I probably should have done. Just right there, set that standard.
At least from my own experience, also being sub, we're not that far removed from first college, but also second high school. And what do you remember being about a student that older educators may have forgotten? Because I think that actually helps you out when you're a young teacher entering the workforce, is you still remember what it was like to be in there and your students shoes. So how has that helped you?
I think the biggest way that it's helped is just creating those connections with them where I'm just like, I have that ability. Like, yeah, I remember having a terrible day in eighth grade or in high school and just being like, everything sucks and being angry or being sad or whatever. And just being like, being able to be like, oh, okay, I remember that. So maybe that's what's going on here. Trying to figure out, hey, what's going on? How can I change it? Or if not even figuring out, just be in the space where it's like, hey, you can just be yourself. There's no problem. Like let's just focus on learning and something positive, some type of stability. I definitely think that has helped a lot. Again, they open up more, and I'm able to see. I think once I think it's a double, like they can see that I've been there recently and I know how it was being there recently. And so we're both kind of like, okay, we understand kind of the similar things. And so I think there's things that they don't get away with in my class because I know what they're doing or what they're talking about, which they might in other classes. But the same goes the other way sometimes.
A question I thought about is how does your age, do you think your age affects your teaching style when you first get into education? You were, what, 23 when you first became a sub. How do you think that affected the way you now teach that maybe would have been different if, say, you were 30 or 40 years old?
100%. I think that I have a lot of energy. Not that you don't have energy when you're older, but I don't have, a family, kids, a house. There's a lot of things that aren't taking that energy from me. And so I do have that for the students. Like I'm going to games after school, I'm going to basketball matches, all those things. In the classroom, I do have that energy where I'm like, hey, I want us at the end of the day, I do want us to be having a good time. No one's going to learn very much if you're having a miserable time. It really depends. There's obviously it's important to find that boundary, that line in the middle. But I think that energy, and then like you said, like I kind of feel like I understand them to a certain extent. So maybe activities are going to be more geared, or a project is going to be something that they might find interesting. Hopefully, obviously I'm just trying.
How many students are you going to be having in this coming semester?
I'm going to have two classes of I think like 20 to 24 kids in each one.
So you mentioned you have around 20 students per class, more or less.
Yeah, 23, 24, somewhere around that. I'm not sure exactly yet.
Is it difficult to give all 20-ish students adequate attention across the board? Is there sometimes you have some students who are just doing the work, head down, getting stuff done, and then we have some usually students who are acting up a little bit more, or they just need more help with whatever project you're doing. How do you kind of delegate time equally, getting the best out of 45-minute period?
Well, luckily we have a block, so it'll be two 45-minute periods kind of together, and I get to choose when that break is. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest, just kind of struggles in teaching in general is how do you make sure everyone's getting what they need? It's impossible, I think, to make sure everybody gets exactly what they need, but just making sure you're trying your best. I think one is just kind of like I'm always keeping an eye out. Like you have some kids that are doing their work and keeping their head down. Maybe they need to talk more in class. Maybe they need to speak more or engage more. That's what they need their work on. They know how to do the writing and the reading, And then there are other students who, they're fine talking in class. They'll talk all the time, and they're not worried about that. They're worried about, their reading skills or their writing skills. Mm-hmm. And so I think that just trying to stay vigilant and see, who's struggling where, making sure I'm keeping track of trends. If it's like the last 5 homework assignments, this kid's been struggling with this, maybe be like, hey, let's work on that. I also will be lucky enough to have, I think in one of my classes, it'll be, I'll have a teacher, one of the special ed teachers at the junior high that works with kids with like IEPs. Mm-hmm. And so.
Could you tell us what that is?
So an IEP, I don't know the exact term for it, but it's pretty much, it's when a student has, different struggles with learning, and so they have gone through the system and where it's like, okay, you have either specialized classes or you have certain time extra on tests. And I know kids that have an IEP and are great at math and they're great at social studies, but they're just really struggle with reading, mm-hmm. And so it works with that. And so just trying to make sure that kids are getting that work outside of class, to make sure they're not falling behind is kind of what the IEP helps with. In my class, I will have a teacher in there that's working with them. So that's going to help right off the bat. Obviously, they're still my students in my class. I'm going to be working with them at the same time, but just to have somebody else that can kind of also be reading the room, seeing who needs what, who needs where. Again, it's one of the big struggles of teaching is trying to figure that whole thing out.
So I know that you've come from a teaching background with both your parents being teachers, more or less, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of influence have you had bringing that from your personal life into the classroom? Is there anyone that you have a mentor? Is it family members that you have that are mentors? Are there other people in the community that you use to kind of bounce ideas off of? create a teaching curriculum or any type of style that you're like trying to copy or recreate, giving your own spin on it? What kind of influence do you have as far as your teaching style?
So like an influence for me, I mean, definitely my great grandparents, my grandparents, my dad's, all my dad's side of the family, my uncles, all teachers. Um, it's something that I didn't think of for myself when I was younger. But yeah, all teachers. So there's a lot of influence there. I think that just learning from them in general, not just about teaching, but just about interacting with people and forming relationships throughout the years has helped a lot with that. For specific like teaching, I did this last semester. I felt like I was kind of thrown in it, and I was happy to be there, and I felt like I did a good job. But yeah, I definitely leaned on some people for help. Most importantly, Molly Selders, Macomb. She's a close family friend. I've known her most of my life, and she was my freshman English teacher. So I was teaching advanced English to freshmen, and so she helped me kind of work some different activities out, just kind of get a base plan, something of a unit planned out. Because in the beginning, I mean, it was I'm looking at a book and I'm looking up different things online, or it's teachers pay teachers. There's so many different things, and I didn't really have a mentor, somebody at the school. I'm sure if I'd asked for more help, somebody would have helped. But there's a lot of just kind of I was figuring it out. So she helped a bunch with that, and then I kind of just took it from there. I definitely used some of her activities, some of her assignments that she uses, some of them that I used.
Yeah.
Was like, I remember these character notes, or I remember this project. But yeah, I would say definitely that. Megan Pittman, my principal, she definitely was selling me on teaching the whole time I was being a sub, and I was like, no, no, no. And as the semester went along, I was like, this is actually amazing. So she was a huge help too, and just in the classroom helping. We'd talk outside of the class, and she'd be like, okay, so how are you doing? What's going on? I'd bounce ideas. She always had good ideas. So that was a lot of that. Yeah.
In front of me, I have a small stack of some relatively old books. And as an English and literature teacher, classes like this often focus on these old books from the 1800s, 1700s, even 1600s of the works of William Shakespeare. How do you make this sort of classic literature still feel relevant to students growing up with all this social media and AI presence?
Yeah. So I think the big thing that I try and think about, like I just taught Romeo and Juliet. I think one of the big ways was just trying to make them understand that time period, clothes, how they talked, what they had around them was totally different. People are the same. People are going to be the same. We're humans. We're going to act the same. We have throughout history. It repeats itself all the time. And I think that connection is what you get out of a lot of these classic books, and of course the literature style and different ways of reading, but like that connection is timeless. And so seeing that relationship between people and being like, hey, this is how it could affect your life, this is what Romeo and Juliet are going through, this is how that could look for you. Like imagine that you had one option or two options. It was run away with Romeo and be banished, or marry some old guy you don't know at all. Like those are your two options in life. And so I think just trying to get that into their heads, that just like, hey, these are still real people. Um, and with the social media and AI, I mean, it's gonna be there, and it's gonna be tough. And I guess I didn't teach or talk about AI as much with the books, but just like I don't know, I think just like straining on that importance of people writing and creating something, and the AI is really getting in the way of the social media. I mean, I'm so lucky that they can't have phones in school. I could not imagine. I mean, I remember in high school we had phones, and it was just like in class is crazy.
To touch on your creative writing, what is something you do to promote students to be more creative, especially with things like AI or society, which is kind of making its way away from original thought? I feel like we grow out of creativity. I think we're all born with it, but we're kind of trained in the sense to move away from it or train certain things that kind of diminish your creativity.
100%. Yeah, I think society kind of trains us to be utility instead of creativity, and just how do we make things more efficient. And so I definitely think creative writing was my favorite class. I loved it. I just had 7 kids or 6 kids. I had control of what we were doing. We wrote a lot of short stories. I think one of the biggest things was just like, one, having them hear each other, and having them hear each other having them hear each other read their stories or their creative writing really helps. It's like they're building their voice. They're building, who they are, and that voice, that identity, that kind of that soul, I feel like is something that obviously like AI is not there. Social media, it's not there. It's all fake, I feel like, if you will. And so just really having that, it's a way for them to express themselves. And so just getting them to like one, be vulnerable and just know and see all the cool things that they can and have done by themselves writing. I mean, there are authors in that class. Like there are some really good writers. And so that was super cool.
There's a lot of criticism online, different social media platforms, that Gen Z and more so Gen Alpha have really short attention spans. Their literacy rate is declining, and of course, constant screen use. What do people get wrong about today's teenagers that you've seen firsthand?
I think that a lot of it is true. I mean, the screens are really messing with everybody's brains. I think our brains, as much as theirs, they just started it younger and had it more often. I really do think that what they're not getting is like they do have attention spans. It's just a little bit harder to get that attention. But when you talk about something they care about, like, oh, they care and they're locked in, if you will. Come on now, and they know what they're doing. It just depends on how do you bridge that first gap of like a lot of them have a stigma like against using their brain. Look, like honestly, like it's like it just feels like work sometimes, I think, to some of them. And so that's unfortunate. And so just letting them know that like, all right, it doesn't always have to be work, it just, hey, we're just doing this. We're just trying things out there. And so I think taking away a lot of those like, points or like quit, like something that really stresses them out. Obviously those are important. We're going to have those, but like letting them be wrong, I think it's super important. That's one thing that a lot of them are afraid of. I think growing up with social media and with, even AI, it's like, it's so easy to find the right answer. People are so afraid to be wrong. Like even kids who I'm like, bro, you might have a better answer than me. Like you're super smart. Like they just need to know that they're right. They're super scared about failing. And so that's really unfortunate. But I think they do definitely have attention spans. And the literacy is tough. It's going down. I mean, even our generation, like it's been going down for a while, which is really tough to see. Which is why I love that I can do English and literature, where it's like maybe if 3 or 4 kids are like, oh, I enjoyed this book, or I actually kind of liked reading. I feel like that makes somewhat of a difference.
How do you kind of promote reading as far as, why is it important for you to have students read, but also why should it be important for them? Have they ever asked you, like, why are we reading this book? What are some reasons you give them as far as, I mean, I've read a variety of books that have changed my whole perspective on life. It's nice getting other people's perspective because everyone thinks about the same text differently, and there's a lot of value in that. I remember reading, like you said, Animal Farm, and a version of it that I was thinking about was completely different than one of my classmates. But that version of his story, if you will, kind of changed my perspective on my whole reality that I didn't even think about. So how do you see that in the classroom where students are kind of getting their reality shifted? And also, what are you doing to kind of promote more reading?
So for like promote more reading, I mean, I read, I really do. Whenever I have if it's like, hey, we're reading for 10 minutes, and if I don't have something, that I need to do, something to get in, some email session, something like, I'm gonna open my book and read. And I'm reading fantasy fiction, sometimes I'm reading it like I'm working my way through 1984 right now. It's the first time since high school. It's a bit slower than what I'm used to, but it's really engaging. I love it. I'm annotating it, which feels weird, but I love, and it really helps it. I think one, showing how much I really do enjoy reading and what it can do for me, talking about, how it's helped me. And like you're talking about Animal Farm. We were at Animal Farm. It's like they had to make podcasts talking about how they could overcome Napoleon's tyrannical rule, and it's like, and talk about what got them there in the first place. It's like the inability to read screwed all those animals over so many times, like over and over and over again. Not being able to read, not being able to formulate their ideas, not being able to articulate their ideas, like that. We are social people, and it's so easy to be influenced, and so I think that's one of them, is just showing like, one, what you can do and what you can stop from happening to you by being able to read, think for yourself. And I think that's one thing that it's a bit harder, but by the end of the unit or the book, like I really do think they're getting it, to that. And Not that they're all reading a bunch now, but I do think that they're like, okay, that is an issue.
I'd like to switch over to the topic of AI in education. I've read
Mm.
some pretty crazy stats recently, and I've heard that anywhere from 86 to 93% of K through 12 schoolers are actually using AI, generative AI, so your tools like ChatGPT every single day. So, has AI changed what you assign, how you grade, or what you consider evidence of learning in your classroom?
I think so. I think it kind of has to. Even if they're not copying and pasting, ChatGPT answers. A lot of them are probably using it to get good, claims or a thesis, or to get their main points for their thesis, or to analyze, if we're doing an article. I have to imagine that a lot of them are doing that. So it is kind of like there's less of just looking for like, oh, do they have, they have the right information, and then looking at how do they say it. I know how this person writes. Are they writing well? Are they writing as well or better than they could? And kind of gauging that. And it's like their voice, and so trying to learn their voice as the semester goes on in their writing, and trying to pick out. But yeah, it's definitely changed the way that you look at it, and it's also, I mean, it's changed the way that they think about it. I mean, it's I didn't get a lot of, just like copy and paste AI. There are some times where I was like I said, I have to imagine that they're probably using it, but it wasn't super obvious, or obvious at all. Yeah, it's a tough one.
So, what are your specific boundaries when it comes to AI in the classroom? And I ask this because this is not really a well defined area. Still, most teachers, even at high school that I've worked at, they don't really have clear boundaries. So, I'm asking, what are yours?
Yeah, again, it's very hard to do. It's an unknown, to a certain extent. I'm sure that our district has policies. I'm not as well informed as I should be. I will be by the time the semester starts. But for me, I mean, obviously copying and pasting. If I can tell that you copy and pasted your answers, or that it's like heavily AI use, it's just unacceptable. It's that's you're gonna rewrite it again and by hand. I feel like that plays a huge part in just kind of, for me, thinking about what type of assignments are we going to do more in class writing. That's one thing I really try and stress on. It's like, even if you're typing, we're doing that in class. 45 minutes, you're going to write 2 academically written paragraphs and with 3 citations or something.
So, what should someone do? What should a teacher do when a student breaks those preset AI boundaries?
I think it depends. You don't want to be too subjective, but I think it does depend on the student. I think that there are some students who sometimes something's going on. This assignment is the cherry on top of all the crap that they've got going on in their life, and they're just like, I can't, and they're just I'm gonna use this real quick. And it's like, hey, have a conversation with them. And even if maybe they're not the best student and you don't think they could, it's like you still need to have that conversation and let them know, like, hey, one, I know, and two, it's like this, it's so detrimental for you. I know it feels like it just makes perfect sense. It makes your life better. It doesn't. Your brain is not working the way it should. So I think definitely having a real serious conversation. And if it consists or if it persists, immediately. I mean, you have to, zero on the assignment, send them to the office. Like that needs to be addressed, because if you get comfortable doing that and you feel like you can just do that, like you're just going to continue to do it. So just letting them know that's not acceptable.
You mentioned not being subjective, but students go through a lot, and you arguably spend more time with them than their respective parents, at least on a day-to-day level, at least over the course of a school year. What are some common struggles you're seeing with individuals, and what do you do to be there for them, help them out? What kind of resources can you give them, and also kind of guide them through tough times? Because I mean, I've seen it with friends. I've been there myself. It's been really nice to have a teacher to talk to, especially when you're going through something really difficult that you don't want all your friends and your social life to know about. But, your parents are maybe not the best people to be there for you. What are some resources that you give them? And
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I mean, the area that I'm kind of working in, there's a lot of poverty. Um, I don't know, statistics. I don't know exactly, but I would assume, from what I can tell, there's a decent amount of, maybe abuse at home sometimes, verbal, maybe physical, maybe even sexual. There's a lot going on in these kids' lives, and I see it, and they'll tell me sometimes, and sometimes they won't, and I can just tell, and then sometimes they'll open up. I've had some really, you know, deep conversations with some of them that have opened up to me, and I feel like that's a privilege, but it's also a really big responsibility. And I always just try and let them know, like, one, like how important they are, and they shouldn't ever feel like any of this is their fault, not just like, not to take blame, like there's nothing that they can do about it, but also always being there to listen, not judge, and just let them know, like, I'm a mandated reporter. There's a certain level. You tell me some things, I have to report it. It's going to be a thing. But there's also, it's like, I provide, again, talking with them. I think my age helps them feel comfortable opening up. And then also like snacks. Like I was stocked. I kept stocked. Granola bars, trail mix, clementines. Ooh, just they would go crazy. They got a little bit too. They would walk in and be like, "Mr. Curtis, can I have a clementine?" I'm like, no, no, no. Like, let's wait. But there's one kid in my creative writing. I got him a granola bar at least every day, because he could eat 10 of them if he want. He doesn't have that at home, and that's something that a lot of these kids, they're not. He was willing to tell me, and he's like, hey, I barely eat, but a lot of them, they are not going to tell you that. You're not going to know, and so just trying to keep that in mind when you're dealing with them. Like, you never know what's going on.
I mean, I've seen it in some of my classes too. Again, mandated reporter. Some things had to tell because
Yeah.
I'm required to do that by law. So absolutely connect with you on that point. And back to the AI topic. I know you've already talked about this, but if an AI tool, generative AI like ChatGPT, can produce an essay in seconds, why should students still learn to write?
I guess if you're going to have AI with you and you totally trust AI for the rest of your life, and you're never going to be in a situation where you don't have AI, then you don't need to. But in any other circumstance, like, you need to. If you're only using that to critically think and form your ideas, one, you're not critically thinking, and you're not forming ideas, and you're not practicing that. It's like anything, practice makes you better at it. And when you're just offloading that to somebody else, you're just delegating your brain work to AI, you're not growing that, and you're not practicing it. And then when you need it, when something's actually important and you don't have the capability to perform that motion or function in your mind, like, that's a real problem. And so, again, if they're always going to have AI with them, they're always going to have data, they're always going to have whatever, then, and you trust it, then maybe it's not a problem. But otherwise, it's like, it's so necessary.
Do you or any of your co-teachers use AI on a day-to-day schedule, or?
I see AI used. I definitely used it sometimes. Again, like, I had just started. I got a business management degree. I'm a 8th grade study hall. They're asking me, about their skill checks, which is like grammar, and I'm like, well, that sentence looks good, but they're asking me past participle. They're talking about things where I'm like, I need to let me look it up real quick. And so sometimes for that, also a couple times for a quick, like, I had an assignment idea, and I was just like, I just need bullet points, or I need a something formed really quick, and I just type in, okay, I have a activity, we're going to be doing this is the main thing that we're going to be da da da, and can you section it out like this? So sometimes I did use that. I plan to use it so much less this next year, now that I have a semester or a summer to plan and get that ready, and I know what I'm going to be doing. But yeah, I see it a good amount with some other teachers. There's some of their assignments, like, they can use AI for it. They just need to find the information. I see both sides to a certain extent. I feel like in English and writing and literature reading, I just don't think it should be there. I do, but for other things, it's like, hey, if that's going to be what the world is like, maybe they should have some practice with it. It's like using the internet. I feel like at some level, it's like, I don't think it's great, even the internet, but like, we've lived in an internet age our whole lives pretty much, and understanding how to use it is pretty important, And so I see that sometimes, definitely.
This is a very broad question, but I think it's worth asking. Do you think technology has been a net positive or net negative for education thus far?
A net negative, a huge net negative. Like, technology in general. Okay, I'm bad. Like, how specific? Like, a pencil's technology, or like electronics?
Let's talk about more electronics, kind of in our current age. So, I mean, you could argue that, yeah, pencil is technology.
Yeah.
If you were just writing on a slate board, that's a bit different than you have an iPad. But let's talk more electronics.
I think like, let's say having Chromebooks, like, they all have Chromebooks. Again, it's hard. I think it's weird. In the world that we live in, I think that it's probably a positive, because the world consists of technology and you need to know how to use it. And so they should be understanding how to use it. I think overall negative, because I think that humans should be less on technology, and we shouldn't be using it so much in society and in general. And so, like for me personally, I think that it's probably a net negative. It distracts. I mean, being able to write with your hand, and I have bad handwriting. I hold it weird. It kind of hurts. Like, but being able to do that and being able to read a book and being able to create your own thoughts, I think that's so important. If if there's not technology, and so banking so much of your education off the use of technology, just assuming that it'll always be there and that we can always trust it, seems a little bit. I don't know. It seems like a faux pas.
Are there some websites that you use? For example, I remember IXL. I hated IXL, but that was a mandatory thing for a lot of my
Yeah, we
classes.
still use IXL.
Oh dear God.
Well, I only used it I did some MTSS, so I worked with like some seventh graders on reading and some comprehension and stuff, and same with eighth graders. So every once in a while, it's a test. I'd be like, hey, just 10 questions on IXL. Let's see where you're at. I know that other teachers use it a good amount. It's weird now looking at it. I'm like, this makes sense. You get in practice with the information. They tell you why you get it wrong. I also remember being a kid and being like, this is dumb, and why am I doing this, and not reading the explanation. So I use it sometimes. I'm going to use it. I think probably have like a weekly IXL next year. We do use. I'm trying to think. I didn't really use many others. I know that teachers do use other websites. There's a new. It's not Kahoot anymore. It's like Book It, or I don't know. There's something.
Cool math games.
Cool math games. Yeah, it's still up and running. It's blocked. They blocked it for the kids, and in study hall one time at the end of the semester, some kid said, "Cool math games is blocked." I was like, "Really?" Turn it around. It wasn't blocked on my computer. I was
There
like,
you
yeah,
go.
no. But yeah, I think they're still using. I don't as much, personally.
To speak a little bit on my experience in high school, I was one of those students who needed to go to a different room during testing.
Mhm.
I needed more time with it. I also got standing desks in a lot of my classes because I
Moving around.
refused. I could not sit still.
What age is it? Is it high school?
This is yeah,
Okay.
my freshman, honestly, through senior year, but the last 2 years was COVID, so I was
Yeah.
at home hanging out anyway. But for me, the standing desk was a game changer. I would move my whole entire workstation like every 10 minutes just around the classroom. And I remember a lot of my friends were like, "What are you doing?" But for me, it was
It worked.
really useful. And even in college, I would get up in the middle of class, go to the back of the room, and stand there for like 5 minutes. I do not care. And for
No,
me,
it's great.
for me,
You know what
I,
you need,
I
you're gonna do
remember, people are like, "This guy's a weird," but it's exactly what I needed. I can't stand still or stay still, especially in those uncomfortable desks. Have you been able to cater to any of those individuals who have struggles in that sense? I've had teachers who halfway through their class period would have everyone stand up, do some jumping jacks, or just do a little walk around or something like that. Are there any things that you do for students just to kind of get rid of energy?
Yeah, yeah. I would say yes sometimes. I mean, near the end of the year, there was a lot of hacky sack going on. It's mainly in study halls, so that's a little different. But in my class, thing is, last semester I only really taught 2.5 classes. I co-taught a math class, and then I had my advanced English and my creative writing. Otherwise, it was like working with kids one-on-one, or kids had online courses for something else, and I was helping facilitate. And so I didn't see that as much. I kind of had smaller classes. One kid, letting him sometimes, as long as he's not gonna disrupt other people, other than moving, or like, I'm like, yeah, if you want to sit in that director's chair up front, yeah, or if you want to move your desk over there, like, sure. So that definitely something that I'm gonna be looking for next this upcoming year, and just kind of see how can I do that. What can I with 23 kids? There's a level, because kids are gonna be, well, why does he get to do that? Why is that? And I don't want to explain. Well, this is what you need, and you don't need that. You just want to do something else because da da da.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I haven't had a lot of experience with it, but I'm glad to hear your experience with it, and it helps me kind of like, oh, okay, that is something that I should be thinking about.
You've talked about this a little bit, but how do you think the job of a teacher is going to be changing or is changing with regard to different tools like YouTube, ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera, because these tools can be used to learn independently. So how do you think a teacher's job is going to change? Is it going to be from more like a primary source of knowledge, like a bank, to now you're kind of more like a facilitator, a helper, and even a mentor?
Well, I think that facilitator, helper, mentor, and knowledge bank has kind of been what teachers have been for a while. I do think it's getting a little bit away from the knowledge bank and a little bit to the other side. That information's online, and there's, you can teach with English. It's a bit different, where I do think that there are, of course, kids that can go watch YouTube and they'll learn, or they'll go use ChatGPT and they'll learn. There are also a lot more kids that'll go do that and not learn. They'll just get it done for this assignment, or they'll just hold it in their brain for a little bit and then it's gone. And so trying to still have those times where they are learning, where they're going through all of the struggle of learning, which is being challenged and sometimes failing, and then finding something and being positive about it, and working through that. I definitely think that, again, it's more on that kind of coach mentor, but less of like, come on, you can use this AI or you can use YouTube. And it's more of just like, all right, like this is how you compose your thoughts, or this is how you critically think about something. And, you know, eh, the world, people use AI, people use YouTube. I use both sometimes to help me. So I don't think I'm going to tell them you should never use this. This is terrible. I think that's a hypocritical thing to say, and not very helpful for them, because, like you said, it's happening. I hope it doesn't. I hope AI stops tomorrow, but I don't think it is. And so definitely trying to find that balance of like, letting them learn how to learn on their own, but just making sure that they're not learning on their own and then not getting any of the information.
On the topic of coaching, you're a pretty competitive person. Have you ever considered doing any coaching for any sports at the school, or is that something that you have interest in?
Yeah. I went to so many sporting events last year. Baseball, softball, Scholastic Bowl, um, basketball, boys and girls, probably more. I love it. It's just another way, one, to connect and to help facilitate positive lives for kids. And also, I am very competitive, and so I do like that. Um, I think that there's a assistant basketball for the junior high boys team open at my school that I think I'm going to apply for. We'll see how that works out. I think maybe I'll try and do maybe a scholastic bowl coach as well. I always want to make sure that one, that my students don't think I have favorites, or they're like, oh, I think basketball kids are cool, and if you're in school, it's like I did all those things. I want to see all of it happen. So really just trying to be more involved. I have such a great time whenever I'm around them, and so it just makes sense.
As we kind of bring this discussion to an end, I wanted to really get your opinion on what do you think in today's world is the most valuable skill that can be learned through a traditional education, like middle school, high school, college? And do you think the institution of education is doing a good job of developing these skills?
No, I think critically thinking, like, and that you say that, but like being able to take something and question it, and then search on your own to find the truth. And like, search, obviously you're going to get through other resources and things, and so it's not just like your own research, but I mean just being able to read is super important. Being able to read, understand, and then form your own opinions is super important. I think social media, AI, all of it is just you're getting so much, and they're just trying to make you feel a certain way. They're trying to make you think a certain thing. They're trying to whatever. And to not have that ability to, one, read and be able to see, oh, they're trying to influence me to feel a certain way, being able to understand that this is not nonfiction, doesn't mean that they don't have a bias. And so, yeah, critically think, read, understand, and question things. And I don't think that the system does that well. I don't think the system wants us to do that well, because then you'll have a lot of citizens that are like, something's up. Yeah.
So do you think that our society is being taught to be dumb in a
I
sense?
think so. Yeah. I don't think they want us to be critically thinking intellectual individuals. Yeah.
Has there ever been a moment where a student has completely changed your perspective of teaching, um, learning, or just on your whole generation in general?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely perspective on teaching and learning. I mean, I talked about him some earlier. I had a student who he hadn't been in the usual, school system. He kind of had some alternative schooling, had some behavioral issues before, real tough life at home. Seeing the way that he kind of learned and blossomed in creative writing, and just the things that, like, some things he's shut down on. And then some things it's just like he's still writing, and he's 25 pages. I was like, you only need 6 pages. He's 25-page story, like just flows. And so seeing that and just being like, oh crap, because I did not expect that. And so it was really cool to see. On teaching in general, I had a student who came to me, and I had him just with a smaller class. We had a good relationship. He came to me and told me some really tough stuff that was going on in his life, and immediately I was just like, this is the most important day that I've had and will have in a very long time, because I was like this. I just listen and try to give my best, opinion, or just to be there for him, whatever. And it kind of, I was just like, oh, okay. Like, yes, I'd really like them to know that, you know, this person died in Romeo and Juliet, or it's really important that this is the reason that this happened in Animal Farm, but like, this is way more important, making sure that this kid knows that, like, one, again, it's not his fault, or like just somebody's there and is rooting for him. And so that really changed. That really changed. Both of those things really changed my perspective on teaching and people. And the generation, I mean, that those kids, I have one kid who, he's a part of a band. He has some songs he's put out on Spotify. He's my creative writing, super talented. Um, I, I have, there's just a lot of them who I could talk about them for a very long time, but who I'm like, oh, okay. Like, no, it's not these kids you see on TikTok or whatever, where it's like, yeah, sure, there's some of that, but they are real human beings, and they're people, and they're developing, and they're, sentient. I don't know. It's cool to see, where I was like, oh, okay. Because you get that kind of, like, they're younger and like, Gen Alpha, Exactly. Like the millennials talked about us. But then I'm like, oh, no, they're cool. No.
Ale, thank you very much. This was a very enlightening conversation, and I got a lot out of it as a former substitute teacher myself. And I think this could be very valuable for any up and coming new teacher, or somebody who's given substitute teaching a try. Would absolutely recommend if you're in that boat. So thank you for coming on the Think Pod, and we'd love to have you again sometime.
Thanks.